Taming the High Cost of College, Episode 98.
You have kids, they grow up, and before you know it, it's time to plan for college.
Where do you start?
How much is it going to cost?
Will you qualify for financial aid?
Should you be looking into scholarships?
When will you be able to retire?
What about student loans?
The list of questions is never ending. The good news is, all the answers are right here. Welcome to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Here is your host, certified financial planner, Brad Baldridge.
Hello, and welcome to Taming the High Cost of College. I'm your host, Brad Baldridge. Today we have a great interview with Marc Hoberman. He's the author of a book called Search and Seizure, Overcoming Illness and Adversity. And that's a great book that talks about his teenage years and how he had to deal with a diagnosis of epilepsy and how he was able to overcome that and continue on with his life and go on with his career. So if you've got any students or family out there that maybe are going through some sort of illness or divorce or other tragic or challenging time, this may be a great book to help you kind of put things in perspective and help get back on track. Marc has also been in the education realm for most of his career, and he does tutoring, including ACT and essay tutoring, as well as other education projects. So he's got a lot of great information, and he understands and works with a lot of students and understands, what they're dealing with, both from perhaps a illness perspective, but also from a education perspective, as far as test anxiety and other things that may come along with the challenges that many teens are facing today. So this is a great episode. Enjoy. All right, today we're sitting down with Marc Hoberman. He is the author of Search and Seizure, and he also works hard in the ACT and SAT test prep and also college counseling. So he's got a lot of great information around college planning. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Brad. I appreciate it.
Hi, so let's start with your book, because I think that is an interesting angle, so to speak, and it's also an interesting story. So tell us a little bit more about Search and Seizure.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Yonkers, New York, for 16 years straight. And when I was in about 9th, 10th grade, my parents came in and said, listen, we're going to be moving to Florida. I had 3 weeks notice, and it, kind of derailed me a little bit because I was popular and enjoyed my childhood, my teen years. And now I was going to Florida. My grandmother was there and I had some cousins there, and that was fine, but didn't have any friends there at the time. And 3 weeks notice wasn't really too good for me at the time. So we went there, and I had always worked in Yonkers, either doing the penny saver or babysitting. I had a newspaper route. So I saved a lot of money over the years. And the first few months that we were in Florida, I was able to buy a 1977 Ford Mustang. Beautiful car, black on the outside with red striping, red on the inside. That car is actually pictured on the book, Search and Seizure, Overcoming Illness and Adversity. Unfortunately, when I went to visit my cousin, I was driving my cousin Candace to visit her brother, my other cousin Mark, at University of Florida in Gainesville. I missed the exit. I was very incoherent. That I remember. The rest of the story I'm telling you, I got it secondhand. I have no recollection of it, unfortunately. So we were driving towards a toll booth. I was getting more and more incoherent, slowing down because I saw the toll booth, and then that was it. That was a petit mal seizure when you zone out or you're incoherent, and then it turned into a grand mal seizure where I stiffened up, lost control of the car. Luckily, we weren't going that fast, but my cousin had to steer the car through the toll booth. And when it went through, luckily, we didn't crash in the embankment. She was able to swing her leg over and step on the brake. The police came and said, is your cousin on drugs? And she said, of course not. And I got up. I said, I'm fine. I fell down. One of the police officers luckily caught me. And then, I went to the emergency room, and 2 hours later came home with a bottle of Dilantin, anti-seizure medication, and an unfortunate diagnosis that I was an epileptic.
Wow. So how did that have an impact on your life going forward?
It was a very, very rough number of months. First of all, in states, the rules vary, but I wasn't allowed to drive for 6 months unless I was seizure-free for 6 months. I was seizure-free for 6 months, but not 6 months right away. I did not get excellent care in Florida, unfortunately. I had seizures on the medication, and that made it very difficult. The dating scene pretty much stops dead when that happens. I love doing favors for people. I don't love asking for favors, and I had to be driven everywhere like I was 9 years old again. It really, my parents were very worried. They didn't show it so much, but, it took its toll on them as well. And that's a tough age. So when you have the stress of moving to a new state and this on top of it, and it really is a snowball effect, Brad, because it's not just the illness, it's the stigma attached to the illness. It's the side effects of the medication from the illness. So all those things put together really create a perfect storm.
Right. So then ultimately, did you go on to college, and, how did you recover from this? And tell us how this inspired your book and what the book is about.
Okay. So luckily the book's been very well received, and one of the professional agency readers' favorite did a review on the book, and he gave me 5 stars, and he said something very telling in the book. The man who reviewed it said that the advice that Marc's mother gave him should be advice that every parent gives every child that age at some point in his or her life. And that was, she came in, and I know she was crying beforehand. She was, in the room with my father when they found out what happened. She came in and said, listen, here's the deal. You're a good-looking boy. You're funny. You have friends. You're intelligent. And you know what else? You're also an epileptic. And you're going to have to deal with that. And this is going to keep you grounded, but you're going to grow from this. This is not going to define who you are. And that's the mantra of the book, really. It's not just about illnesses. Not let your struggles define you. You define them. And, I do make the statement quite often that I am not who I am in spite of my illness. I am who I am because of my illness. And I didn't heed my mother's advice right away. I heeded that advice slowly. It's hard as a teen when you're not driving and you're feeling certain side effects of the medicine. But I started to research the illness. And depending upon the age of your audience, they may not know this term, but I had to go to the library and look it up on microfiche. So I'd say in the month or 5 weeks that I was calling hospitals in the Mayo Clinic and looking things up in the periodical section of a library and on microfiche and things of that nature, I could probably find out all I researched and found out in a month, probably in 2 hours on the internet now. So things are a lot different now, and there's more social media pages to share your story and hear other people's stories. So it was rough. I'm not going to say, I've grown a lot because of it, but it wasn't it wasn't so easy when I was that age. Luckily, when I was about 18, we moved back to New York because they had to find better doctors for me. And I found someone in Columbia Presbyterian, one of the top 3 doctors in the country, neurologist, Dr. Eli Goldenson, and met him. And as luck would have it, God was on my side. He interviewed me for a long time, spoke into a dictaphone for an hour, and prescribed a pill. And I was seizure-free because of that pill for 28 years. I never had a seizure on that pill. So I just started to, make sure that it wouldn't define me, and that I worked around it and managed it and walked around knowing I was grounded. And hey, I have this, and could I have a seizure at any time? I could. As I got on better medication, it was far more remote, but it's something that's always in the back of my mind. It doesn't need to be in the back of other people's minds. So yes, I did go away to college. My parents were a little worried about that, but I was controlled for quite some time on the new medication for over a year. I went away to SUNY Albany and, made new friends and really enjoyed myself. And I was, thank God, I say this a lot on some podcasts and radio shows, that it's kind of embarrassing to me. I had no idea how lucky I was and how lucky I am until I started to get the book out there, and people who had all kinds of problems, but particularly people with epilepsy, they're not controlled. A lot of people aren't controlled. People who tell me, they're on medications and they have seizures 5 and 6 a day, every day. I've had over 20-something seizures in my life. Thank God, not 20 in a day. I've also, oddly enough, even though I've been teaching for 33 years, I've had students in my class with epilepsy, but I've had 20-plus seizures. I've never seen one. So, as the years went on, I grew from it, and I said, this is going to make me stronger. And there were some problems along the way, but, I had some resolve and decided to make sure that I was going to run my life. Nothing else was. And it's not a book just for epileptics. It could be people who are bullied. It could be people who have any kind of struggles. It could be, teens whose parents are divorced. It's really good for parents too. I have a lot of parents and teens reading it together. My parents made some good decisions medically and did everything they could for me, but emotionally, I think they were suffering, and had a book like this existed back then, they would have fared better. And quite honestly, I would have fared better.
Right. So that's obviously a interesting story. And now that kind of transitions into what you're doing today, where you're actually helping not just obviously epileptics or even people with troubles, but you've moved into the education realm now, where you've written a book, but you're also doing some tutoring and other things. So can you tell us a little bit what you're doing today?
Beginning to end, which is a bit of an oxymoron, but this is my 33rd year teaching. So next 1 to 3 years, I'm probably going to retire, but retire from teaching, not from education. Education is what I do. So I started the tutoring business about 22 or so years ago, and always tutored, always did, last 15, 20 years, I've done camp consulting, educating people on at orientations, how to do group dynamics and group management. But it manifested itself into tutoring. I was doing English, and then it became SAT prep. And then years ago, about 7, 8 years ago, when the ACT became really much more popular all over the country, not just in the Midwest, and started to overtake the SAT. I've done SAT tutoring for 25 years. But, so I do small groups, I do private, and now I've branched out about 2 years ago to online. So now I can tutor somebody, and my tutors can tutor in any subject. But, I do basically English. There's ACT prep, SAT prep, but you could be in any place, any city, state in the world, even another country, and we can do the online platform. And it's sort of like, I call it Skype on steroids, because I can see them and they can see me, but it's a whiteboard. So if I press a button and put some work on that I've emailed them, it's there live instantly. If I circle a word and say, hey, underline the subject, underline the verb, it's instant. If they want to write an essay, I see it as they hit the keys. I see the letters appear. And the kids love it because it's easy, but it's technology, and they love technology. It saves them a lot of time and having to travel to a tutor back and forth. So, I tutored someone in Israel last year, and I'm in New York. So it runs the gamut. We do a lot of educational consulting. We do college search, the essay, the activity sheet, things of that nature. I do a lot of educational consulting with parents on how to help their kids succeed in school and make it so there's less stress in the house, and how they use study skills and organizational techniques that I teach them to recall information better. So everything with education is what we do, basically.
Right. So now, do you think your story and or the book that you wrote has an impact on how you do things? Does that make you a little different, do you think?
I would say absolutely yes. And I think it always had. I just never realized why. I just thought, hey, I have a good rapport with kids and a good rapport with the parents, and I love educating and I'm passionate about it. But I realized that there was something in me that other people didn't have, only because, not they don't want it, but I have the experience in that type of situation. I started to write this book several years ago, and I put it aside because, life gets in the way and you get busy. But my son was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, about 3 or 4 years ago. Lost weight. He was thin to begin with, but such a happy boy. And then he started to get a little depressed and had some skin issues on top of that. And I said, look, this is going to keep you grounded. The same speech my mother gave. We will leave no stone unturned. They knew I had epilepsy, my kids. That's all they knew. Maybe it was mentioned once. They never saw a seizure, thank God. We never discussed it, never needed to. And my wife said to me, how could you be so methodical about this and so calm? And I realized the light bulb went off, and I said, I guess it's because I experienced this. And I said, I'm an educator at heart, and if I can help you and our son and our family get through this and work through this, I can do this with the people, not just that I tutor, but in the educational realm with parents and teens also. And it does, I noticed that when kids had test anxiety, or if they had some issues, I've had students who've had Tourette's and Asperger's, and they've claimed that I've had a better rapport and better results with me than with some other people. And I think that's because of the illness that I had and the experience I've had, as a teen with some issues.
So I guess my next question, if I am a parent of a student that has some either special need or just an unusual situation, say, we're going through a tough divorce and now we've got a kid that's, a little withdrawn or struggling a little bit because of that. Do you think we should be doing things differently than parents where everything seems just fine?
Yeah, well, I have to tell you, it's an excellent question, because even if things are just fine, you have to understand something. I tell the parents, you're the enemy. Yes, your kids love you, you love them, but I have 2 sons, and I've had the tutoring agency forever. I've been teaching for 33 years English, and I could not tutor them. I tried once, and we almost killed each other. I said, if you're too emotionally involved, you have to take a step back. So I tell them, let me be the good guy, let me be the bad guy. When kids don't do their homework, which is very rare, any homework I give them, it's not a ton of homework, but they have to do some practice at home. I don't call and tell mommy right away. The first time I say, I will not tell you. I will deal with the student my own way and make sure they get the job done, because people deal with their parents differently than they deal with other adults. So for them to first realize that they're not the enemy because of hate, they're the enemy because, hey, there's too much of an emotional connection there. So there are ways of doing things differently. I mean, I've seen parents, I'm going to be honest with you, say, in front of their kid, your brother was such a much better student. I've seen teachers say, boy, you're nothing like your brother. He was a much harder worker. I don't go there. And that's unethical, unprofessional. It's not helpful. But people do it, and they've gotten that trap before. So I've helped even teachers with that. But also parents have done that too. And there's ways I do a lot of study skills consulting, because there are kids who really do study. And, a lot of the test anxiety is kind of a misnomer. If you study wrong and you study for 4 hours, and the next day your friend studied for an hour, you study for 4 hours, and you're not going to recall the information, that creates anxiety. So, if you're in a classroom, you're taking notes incorrectly, and you have the best of intentions, and come back home and study the notes that are not good, you could study for 6 hours. It's not going to do anything for you. So it could create a vicious cycle. So people have to realize that people need the right tools. I could want to build a house, but if I don't have the tools with me, it's not going to happen. So in answer to your question, some people do have to do things differently. You have to meet your children at their reality, which is not easy to do when you're emotionally involved, but there are ways to do it, and there are strategies to assist you with that.
Right. Now, has it been your experience that sometimes the adversity gets in the way to the point of stopping or preventing things from moving forward, or are there generally a way around it?
Well, there's always a way around it. And in my book, I said you have to realize that when you hit a stumbling block, if one door is closed, go in the back door. And if both doors are closed to you, break a window. And that's just a metaphor for that fact that everybody has adversity. However, when teens and students of all ages have adversity, that tends to make them lose focus. So they can't encode and decode information while their mind is on something else. And we have breathing techniques. I have somebody who works with me who does even further work on test anxiety. And you have to really have a support system. I did have a great support system as a kid, but then I realized that the support system starts with you. So yes, adversity absolutely gets in the way. And when you're a teen, with the hormones going in 9 different directions, and peer pressure, and drugs being all around you, depending upon where you're located, and bullying and cyberbullying, and technology is a wonderful thing, but it's gotten beyond out of hand with texting and sexting and saying something and having it on Facebook or Snapchat 4 seconds later for all the world to see. It becomes very difficult. I think it's much more difficult to be a teen today than it was. Yeah, we had bullying, but this has gone up to the next level and beyond.
Right. Well, that's a lot of great information. Now, I know you also, like you said, you do some ACT and SAT tutoring and that kind of stuff. So if people want to learn more about working with your company, how would they go about doing that?
So the main hub, I have an author site also, but for the main hub for the tutoring, it would be www.gradesuccess.com, like you're in the 4th grade, GRADESUCCESS.com. And there's a link to my author site also if they want to see the book or another book also for teachers that they can look up there. But my contact information, the social media information is all at gradesuccess.com. And I'd certainly like to, I think you provide a wonderful service in this podcast. I'd love to offer your listeners a free demo, 5 to 10 minute demo of the online platform. I think they would love it. The kids seem to really enjoy it, and I think it's worth checking out. So no obligation, no cost. I'm happy to offer that to the listeners of Taming the High Cost of College.
All right, that would be great. So if you're interested in learning more about Marc and his services and you want to take advantage of this, we will put a link in the show notes so you can just go there, click on the link, and it'll take you over to Marc's website, and you can contact him to learn more. Any final thoughts or remarks as far as what people might want to be doing, again, if they find themselves with some adversity and as it ties to college?
Sure. Well, first of all, they have to know they're not alone. Second of all, I have to tell you that in the last, we do some college work, and in the last, I want to say 7 or 8 years, I've seen the highest number of students not graduating from the college they went to. And there's several reasons for that. One is that they go there and they're not used to the social aspect of it, because mommy and daddy aren't there to say it's 12 o'clock, you're going to sleep, you got school tomorrow. So some people are sitting up at 2 a.m, are like, nobody's here telling me what to do. So, you have to really help organize them and know that college planning really is based on what you do. It's certainly, the financial aspect, but it's the organizational aspect. It's the succeeding aspect of it. Is what are you going to do? Because some people who are fabulous students in high school have a very rigid study technique and habit that does not always follow through when they go to school, because it's a different situation. Certainly if they go, away to school. So when it comes to adversity, they need to know that they're not alone, and they need to know that if they do have any problems at school whatsoever, every school I know of has places you can go on the campus for assistance. And, this is no place for ego. You have to be open and honest with your parents, and the parents, you have to be very open and honest with your children, and not talk at them, but talk with them, and don't just listen to them when they speak, hear them when they speak, because you want to open dialogue, and you want to make sure that during this whole process of college planning and then going to college, that the lines of communication are open. And there will be a lot of adversity. They're going to fail a test, and they're going to not do well. And a lot of kids have said, my parents have mortgaged the house to go to college, and I'm not doing well. And there's so much extra help and honor students who are getting stipends or some money, scholarships to tutor kids for free. There's just a lot of places you can go. So they have to do what I did. What I did was, when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, was I researched my struggle and my particular adversity, which was epilepsy in my case. In other people's cases, it could be bullying. It could be that, hey, I need extended time. I can't finish things. I can't organize myself. I have too many things due at once, and I can't prioritize properly. And there's help for that everywhere, on the internet, through tutoring agencies such as mine, through using your parents and resources they have. So, it's a long-winded answer, but I guess it's that, it's an ongoing process. Nobody leaves, I don't want to say nobody, but it's very hard to just leave for college and boom, it's all set in front of you, and the success is easy. If you're regimented, if you are have some resolve, and if you are open to the fact that you will try everything and anything to make sure you succeed, to make things more manageable for you, that's when you're going to do well.
Right, absolutely. And I guess that brings up another point, and maybe you can comment on this as well, but when you did your research, you kind of started with the library and microfiche and so forth, and now you're saying it's available on the website. So can you give us some ideas of where you might look or how you might look as far as finding support? And if you want to use epilepsy as an example, great. If you just want to talk generally, that would be great too.
Sure. So if you're a parent, it depends on your status. Are you a parent? Are you the kid? I've been on Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook user. I am more now with my business, but I didn't know 4 months ago, I didn't know what a Facebook group was. So now I'm a member of 15 or 20 epilepsy groups, and information I'm finding out now is unbelievable. So, and then I see some teens on there that say, I feel like giving up. I have a seizure all the time. It's so embarrassing, all this other stuff. And, I see people helping each other. And that's one of the mistakes I made that I want to caution your audience not to make. I did not share my illness. I did not let people know. Up until a year ago, I was diagnosed with epilepsy probably close to 40 years ago, and fewer than 10 people in my life knew it. I had close relatives who read the book and thought it was fiction. They had no idea I really had epilepsy. I didn't want to tell teachers. I didn't tell people in my school where I worked because I was controlled. But you need to talk to people. You have to make a decision. If people don't want to be friendly with you, or they look the other way or walk the other way because they don't want to be associated with you because of your struggles or whatever, those aren't people you want as friends anyway. Certainly, you anywhere, WebMD, Google, you can look up, so a lot of books too. People should really read a lot of self-help books. That's why I made this book short. This book's a 2-hour read. It's 106 pages. But a lot of people tell me they get more out of this than books that are 600 pages because it's to the point. And there's magazines out there. There's self-help groups there's something called meetups. I don't know if it's meetups.com, but there are so many people out there that share. You can't be on this earth and not have some type of adversity, either at every stage in your life or at some stage in your life. So you have to know you're not alone. You have to let the ego and the embarrassment get out of it, out of the way. And look, I'm somebody who didn't tell the vast majority of people I knew until I was 54 years old. So I understand where they're coming from, but you have to share these things and you have to build your own support network. And it starts with you, but there's no reason to keep these things secret. And to me, there was a big stigma. That's why and I was controlled. So imagine if I was a person, God forbid, who had seizures 2 times a week in class as a student or even as a teacher. So I think you need to be open and honest with people. And again, don't let your struggles define you. You define them. Own them, embrace them, be knowledgeable about the situation and what other people do in your situation to overcome their adversity. And that, in turn, will help you.
All right. Well, great. I really appreciate it, Mark. I'm glad you are being open. I think people will, get a lot from this podcast and certainly can get a lot more if they go find your book as well. I appreciate all the great information and we'll stay in touch.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, Brad. I really appreciate it.
All right. That was a great episode with Mark. Hopefully you gained a lot from that. As always, we have show notes available at tamingthehighcostofcollege.com/98 for this particular episode. If you would also leave us a review at iTunes, it would be greatly appreciated. It helps us get found as people are searching. That's all we have for this week, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Taming the High Cost of College podcast. Now it's time for you to take action. Head to tamingthehighcostofcollege.com for show notes, bonus content, and to leave feedback for Brad. The next step on your college journey starts now.
Brad Baldridge is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research and an investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer and member of FINRA and SIPC. Brad owns 2 companies, Baldridge Wealth Management and Baldridge College Solutions. The Baldridge companies are not affiliated with Cambridge Investment Research.